What's the advantage of a democracy? Everybody feels like they have a voice in the government. And so Polybius comes along and says, you know, there really are good things in every one of these forms of government. No one of these is particularly good all by itself, but you combine them. And this would be kind of an interesting concept, to combine all these positives in each one of these forms of government. So he proposed in his writings what kind of a constitution? Did you get that word from your studies?
Mixed.
That's correct. He proposed a mixed constitution. And he said, okay, we're going to take the advantage of a monarchy. I ask you, do we have the advantage of a monarchical form of government in our Constitution today? What do we call him? The President. Is he really a monarch? No. But he has certain powers that a monarchy has. What powers are those? We call them some of the fundamental war powers. When Congress declares war, that mobilizes the President, who is the what? Commander-in-Chief of the military. And under certain war powers, he can do things constitutionally that he couldn't do if Congress didn't declare war. Notice it's Congress that declares the war, not the President in the Constitution. We'll study that. But as soon as Congress declares war and says we are at a state of war, then the President can do a lot of things with his war powers. We've seen the President take over certain industries to provide food and build tanks. And we've seen the President ration food to make sure there's enough food for our fighting forces. We've seen him take over highways to make sure that the transportation of materiel for war use from one side of the country to the other. We've seen all those things happen. See, that's monarchical power. And Polybius says, you need that. So he says that's a good thing, but of course you have to do what with the power of the President? Or the executive? You have to keep it very limited so it doesn't run away with you. Okay? Here's another interesting thing. How is the next form of government, an aristocracy, reflected in our system? Congress? Okay. Congress has two houses, right? Two branches. What are they? You know this. House of Representatives and the Senate. House of Representatives is voted on by whom? The people. So that doesn't necessarily represent the wealth, right? It's just all the people. The Senate, of course this has changed now, but before 1913, before the 17th Amendment, who chose the senators? Do you know this? We'll study this a little more in detail. The rich people? Well, not exactly. But the people who were experienced enough in government to know when wealth was being attacked. Those were the ones that were in charge of choosing the senators. Who were they? Do you know this? Under the original Constitution, the state legislatures chose the senators to represent their state. And most of the time, the state legislatures who could see what was happening out there, they could see and sense the federal government getting too powerful with the people through the House of Representatives, giving them everything the people wanted. And they would say, absolutely not, we're not going to do this, because it will destroy states' rights and it will destroy the protection of property of the wealthy. So really, we see this aristocracy reflected in the Senate, the way the founders originally set it up. Isn't that interesting? The Senate was the one that was really charged with the protection of the status quo, the protection of the accumulation of wealth, so that the masses cannot vote away the wealth of the people, either directly or through their representatives. All right? Where do we see a democracy reflected in our system? In what body? representatives. Why? Because everybody votes for them, right? In some places, and Polybius called it the assembly. Some states still call it the assembly. We call it the House of Representatives here in our state. But so what do you think? This is Polybius's mixed constitution.